This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Okay, welcome everyone. So now we're going to continue in our Bar Mitzvah series. Actually, we had quite a number of Shiurim on Bar Mitzvah this year. We're going to discuss a particular Mishnah Berurah. The Mishnah Berurah in Siman Reish Chaf Hey Siv Katan Vav writes, Mitzvah al ha'adam la'asos suda. There's a mitzvah on a person to make a meal. B'yom shenasa b'noi bar mitzvah. On the day that his son becomes a bar mitzvah. Ki yom shenichnas l'chupah. Like the day that he got married. So the question is, first of all, what is the analogy between becoming a bar mitzvah and getting married? Even in terms of costs, the costs are different, right? But what's the comparison? There's a mitzvah.
It's catching up in some places.
Yeah, the bar mitzvah is catching up. The thing is, the wedding is also equally. What is this analogy that the Mishnah Berurah is giving, that it's a mitzvah for a person to make a Suda on the day? So you say, I made a Shabbos, I made an affair. Well, if you didn't, the mitzvah is to make it on that day. Ki yom shenichnas l'chupah. Like the day he entered the Chupah. What's the comparison between bar mitzvah and entering the Chupah? First question. Second question, like the day who entered the Chupah? Like the day the bar mitzvah boy enters the Chupah, or like the day the father enters the Chupah?
If he got married before the bar mitzvah, yeah, who's older?
Usually the father is older than the child. Usually that works out that way. And also, where did the Mishnah Berurah get this from? What's the source that bar mitzvah is like yom shenichnas l'chupah? So it's brought over here. We're reading from the Sefer Bar Mitzvah, Oitzer HaBar Mitzvah, that this comes from the Magen Avraham. The Magen Avraham writes in Siman Reish Chaf Hey Siv Katan Daled that there's a Yalkut Chadash that says Mitzvah al ha'adam la'aseh suda b'yom shenasa b'noi bar mitzvah ki yom shenichnas l'chupah.
Which way you up to?
So the lashon of the Mishnah Berurah is straight out of the Magen Avraham from the Yalkut Chadash. Now, where the Yalkut Chadash get it from? It's from the Zohar Chadash. The Zohar Chadash says that Hu Yoima Chayvasa al Tzadikaya lemevad Chedvasa deliba. On that day, it's a chayv on the tzaddikim to make a joy. Ki Yoima desak l'chupah. Rabbi say, what is the comparison between bar mitzvah and chupah? So there are many different explanations.
Was the 13-year age qualified you to become a chassan? Was there something?
Oh, good. We may get to that. We may get to that. Another question we could ask is, what do we call a bar mitzvah? We call him Ya'amod HaChasan. Right? We call him a chasan. Anyway, B'Ktsois HaShulchan, in the Sefer Ktsois HaShulchan. Ktsois HaShulchan was written by Reb Chaim Noah. By the way, Reb Chaim Noah, he started off, he was a Rav in Bukhara. So in a great old-time poskim. He got a job in Bukhara. Sometimes the rabbi, you got to go where the job is. And actually, they suggested to him that he change his last name from Mendel to Mendelov, which he did. People used to joke with me over here in Queens, I should change my name to Glatstein. It's not a joke. It's not a joke. Here you have one of the great old-time Gedolei Yisrael. He changed his last name. Anyway, after that, he was a rabbi in Egypt. He's one of the well-known Shitais in Shiurim. His Shita is like the smallest measurement for Shiurim. Kazai is Kabeya. So he says like this. What does the Magen Avraham mean? There's a chiyuv to make a suda kiyam shenichnas l'chupah. So he says there's an allusion to this. The Mishnah says in Tainis, Tziena ure'ena b'nois tzion ba'melech shloimai ba'a Torah she'itraloi imai b'yom chasunasai u'v'yom simchas libai. Tziena ure'ena b'nois tzion ba'melech shloimai ba'a Torah she'itraloi imai b'yom chasunasai u'v'yom simchas libai. Yeah, I think that's what it says. Sounds good. But it says on the day of his chasana, Matan Torah. So we see from here, the day of Matan Torah is compared to a chasana. What day does a person have his own personal Matan Torah? On their bar mitzvah. So if the day of Matan Torah is like a chasana, and when one becomes a bar mitzvah, that is when the Torah is given to them. Hence the analogy that the day of a bar mitzvah is the simcha of a chasana. Okay, So that's an interesting pshat of none other than Reb Chaim Noah. The Chasam Sofer, none other than the Chasam Sofer. I was just at his kever in Bratislava, the Heilige Chasam Sofer. Chasam Sofer writes in Parshas Mishpatim, on the pasuk Lo Sia Mishakela, he quotes the Magen Avraham from the Yalkut Chadash, that you should rejoice on that day, Ki'ilu Echnisa L'Chupah. Why? Says Chasam Sofer, we know that the relationship we have with Torah is a wedding. Like it says, Torah Tziva Lanu Moshe, Moira Shah Kihilas Yaakov. Torah Tziva Lanu Moshe, Moira Shah Kihilas Yaakov. And Chazal Darshan, Al Tikri Moira Shah, Ela Me'oira Sa. That means our relationship with Torah is as a husband and wife. Therefore, since this is the day where machnes the child l'Torah, and relationship with Torah is like a wedding, so therefore, from the Chasam Sofer we see that it's the simcha of the father. It's the father simcha. The simcha of a bar mitzvah is the father simcha. That the father is being machnes his son to the chuppah. And hence, in other words, the child is now becoming wed to the Torah. Okay. There's another interesting pshat here in Biur Gimel that he quotes from the Shalas Chupah's Ribavos Ephraim, Chelek Ches, page Taf Aleph, from Hagon Rabbi Menashe Klein, Zechazak Levracha. And that is, you could ask the following question on Magen Avraham. If you actually look up the Yalkut Chadash, it doesn't say it's a mitzvah on a person to make a suda. It says it's a chayiv. It's an obligation. Why does the Magen Avraham change the language of the Medrash? The Medrash says one is obligated to make a suda on the day their son becomes a bar mitzvah. And the Magen Avraham says, no, it's a mitzvah. There's a big difference between a mitzvah and a chayva. Also, let's ask another question. Why does the father have to make the suda? Shouldn't you know who should have to make the suda? The kid should have to make the suda. It's the kid's simcha. The answer is, one question answers the next. The chiyuv is on the kid. The father just has a mitzvah. The father's not obligated to. The kid is mechoyev. The father is only a mitzvah. So he says like this. The chiyuv is on the ben. Ela dekivan sha'ben. The problem is, you're right, the son is mechoyev. He just doesn't have money. How's he going to do it? Because he sold lemonade once and he has $1.50 in his piggy bank? So he taka has a chiyuv, but there's nothing he could do about it. Memela, the father only has a mitzvah. This is the analogy, kiyom shenichnas l'chupah.
Isn't the bris the same as a chiyuv and a mitzvah?
The chiyuv is taka on the father, right? There the chiyuv, but it's similar, right? And this is the analogy, says the Rabbi Menashe Klein, this is the analogy to a chuppah. Who needs to make a chasana? The kid. The kid. But the problem is, we try to marry off the kids when they're young, before they have any money, and before they start to think whether they should do it or not, right? So at that point in time, the kid doesn't have money, the father makes... So just like by a chasana, it's the parent who makes the chasana, even though if the child would have gotten married at a chves, 30, 40 years old, he would have done it himself. But at this age, when you marry them off, they don't have the money. So too, by a bar mitzvah, the mitzvah is on the father, it's because the chiyuv is on the kid. Okay. Let's do another pshat. Look in Biur Zayin, bottom left-hand corner.
How did you say before that the bar mitzvah, the father is the...
That's what we said from the Chasam Sofer. This is another, yeah. Okay. Says the Kloisenberger Rebbe, Shalos Chupah's Divrei Yatziv, Archaim, Siman Tzadei Gimel, Sivkat and Daled. What does the Magen Avraham mean from the Yalkut Chadash, Ki Yom Shenichnas L'Chupah? So this is what the Dak was saying. The simcha is, now he could get married. At 13 years old now the child could get married. When he's a katan, you don't marry off a kid when he's a katan. But now, so, every day that passes, it's too late already. As soon as the kid is bar mitzvah, he could get married. What's the raya? Because we find in the Zayar Chadash, on Rav Shimon Bar Yochai, that his father made a 3-day suda when his son became a bar mitzvah. Why? He was so happy, he realized that his son had a tremendously a very sanctified soul. And in the middle of the Suda, Rabbi Yossi said to Rosh Hashanah, hey, I like your kid. What about my daughter for your son? At the bar mitzvah, already he had a few prospects. He had a prospect. And the Rashbi said, let's go for it. And they called the Chachamim, and they got married right then and there. Why waste money on another affair, Once the cameraman is out, so he's there. Okay? So what do we see? Once Rabbi Eliezer became a gadol, he could get married. Mamela, that's what it means. Kiyom shenichnas l'chuppah. Today is already the day that you could be nichnas l'chuppah. Start getting ready. The father could start listening to suggestions already at the bar mitzvah. He has to start thinking about planning for the chasana. That's the comparison, says the Kloisenberg Rebbe, to Yom Shenichnas L'Chuppah. Okay. Let's see a little further. Look in Ois Yud Aleph on the next page. Why do we call the bar mitzvah a chasan? So now we could understand, based on this Magen Avraham, that it's a mitzvah l'aseh suda kiyam shenichnas l'chuppah. So Mamela, we understand why we call him a chasan. Another beautiful reason why we call the bar mitzvah a chasan is because there's a pasuk about the Kohen Gadol, ki chasan yichahin pe'er. Like a chasan, he dons pe'er. And we know that tefillin is called pe'er. So now that the boy starts wearing tefillin, and the description of tefillin is a description compared to a chasan. Ke chasan yichahin pe'er. Now, there's another inyan in which way that the bar mitzvah is compared to a chasan. There's a shayla in the Eishal Avram. Maybe just like a person fasts the day before their wedding, maybe the bar mitzvah boy should fast the day before the bar mitzvah. That's why a lot of people make bar mitzvahs on Sunday. This way the kid doesn't have to fast, right? But is there such a thing that the kid should fast the day before the bar mitzvah? So the Eishal Avram Taka brings that some people say you should do this. Also,
the day before bar mitzvah is still a cotton. How can you impose a fast on?
Yeah, we don't do that. Okay. Here's another good shaila. Look in Ois Yud Beis. Well, now that we're making the analogy that a kid at his bar mitzvah is like a chasan, look in the Shal Shuvas Mishnah Halachos, Rabbi Menashe Klein, that some want to say that if somebody becomes the bar mitzvah during Sfirah, the bar mitzvah boy could shave and the father could shave. Why? Because it's a mitzvah lasei suda kiyam shenichnas l'chuppah. Meaning, he's like a chasan and it's a yom tif, so he should be able to shave. That's the argument of Rabbi Menashe Klein. However, Rabbi Menashe Klein ultimately pushes it off. He says, Ulam, the Mishnah Halachos kosev lidchos devada yenoi doimel chasan mamish. It's not mamish dama to a chasan. Why? We find by a chasan that if somebody passes away, the chasan is pater from avelas. We for sure don't say that by bar mitzvah boy. Another thing, we're going to come to this. Look on the bottom. Well, do you say tachnon? Do you say tachnon in a shul where a kid is becoming bar mitzvah? That's a good one. Anyone ever see a shul where they're about to say tachnon? Oh, the kid's bar mitzvah. They don't say tachnon? No, but it's a shaila. Look in the bottom right-hand column. In the Ktsois HaShulchan Siman Chavdar, he brings that in Egypt, right? Remember we mentioned Reb Chaim Noah was a rabbi in Egypt. The minhag was that if a boy is becoming bar mitzvah, we don't say tachnon.
Even if the boy is making a seal?
That we don't say tachnon.
Yeah, we don't say tachnon.
The minhag in Egypt is not to say tachnon, and in his Sefer Shnois Chaim he writes, the reason is because the chasan is daimel melech, like the Magen Avraham says. Okay, interesting. That's the psak of Chaim Noah. Then on the day that a child becomes a bar mitzvah, the shul doesn't say tachnon. So if anybody wants to daven in our shul on Sunday, first of all, having a nice breakfast in the morning, my son's putting on tefillin, but if you want to get out of tachnon, No, I'm not, but you'll see. We don't necessarily follow this, okay? But actually, I have someone in my shul who's a grandson of Rabbi Chaim Noah, but even so, if you look in the Tzitz Eliezer discusses this psak of Rabbi Chaim Noah, and he says that it's not a correct minhag. So,
Even the boy is going to make a siyum?
You say tachnon even at a siyum. And he quotes over here that from the Shas HaTshuas L'Hoyros Nasan, that we don't compare a nar bar mitzvah to a chasan. Why? Very interesting lamdas. Why? Just because one guy is a chasan, the whole shul doesn't say tachnon? He shouldn't say tachnon. What's it got to do with me? I got to go to work today. I got to schwitz and deal with some, mean boss. I shouldn't say. The answer is that tzibur has a responsibility to be misameach a chasan. The joy, the marrying of the chasan is responsibility on the tzibur. So therefore, if there's a chasan, it exempts the whole tzibur from tachnon. But there's no mitzvah of being misameach a bar mitzvah boy. There's no such thing. Therefore, the bar mitzvah boy, he has a nice day, he has a good day. But the chiyuv is not on the tzibur. That's the distinction why by a chasana it would pater the whole tzibur, not by bar mitzvah. He says, this is Shas HaTshuas L'Hoyros Nasan, Ein l'dam is nara bar mitzvah chasan shepoiter mitachnon, v'zois mishum da mitzvah sameach as chasan mutal sal kol hatzibur. Therefore, they're drawn after him. The mitzvah of simchas chasan is on the whole kahal. Bar mitzvah, even though it's on the father, l'smayach kiyam shalom zechupah, but it's not going to pater the whole tzibur. Similar to the fact, let's say you have an avel who comes to shul. The avel doesn't say tachnan. You ever see a shul where, there's an avel in shul, so we don't have to say tachnan today? Even though you might think, what do you mean, the whole tzibur has to be menachem? No, it's not a chiv on the tzibur, it's a chiv on each individual. Interesting idea.
So Bar Mitzvah boy himself doesn't...
Bar Mitzvah boy himself, does the Bar Mitzvah boy himself say tachnan, huh? I don't know, it's a good one.
Probably yes.
Well, according to this, the Bar Mitzvah and his father shouldn't say tachnan.
Right.
Hey! Shkoyach. You're hired, Yaakov.
It was worth coming to Shiur for this, just for that.
Yeah. So according to this, the father shouldn't say tachnan. Wow. But what if the father is the rabbi of the shul? Then maybe no. All right. For further questions, so this will be section 1, okay? It's a good one.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.